Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the final declutter on my channel this year. I have a huge basket of stuff that I have decided to part ways with and get out of my collection. My makeup inventory is coming up and I was like, girlfriend, you need to get it together and get rid of a few of these items before we embarrass ourselves with our makeup inventory. I do have quite a few palettes that I am going to be decluttering and I was debating. So I have palette week upcoming and I'm going to be discussing all of the different eyeshadow palettes that I decluttered from my collection this year, and I debated saving these eyeshadow palettes for that video, but I will just further discuss these palettes in that video as well. But I have, again, quite a few products in this basket that I have decided to declutter. So if you guys are interested in seeing the products that I will be parting ways with, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I would love if you would consider subscribing before moving on. I am posting every single day throughout the month of December on this channel. So if you love palette content, project panning, or just talking about makeup in general, I would love if you would subscribe before moving on. And other than that, let's get into this final declutter of 2020. Currently sipping on Alani new Tropicals, so it feels like I'm on vacation while getting energy, even though not on vacation. I have a feeling this is going to be a long video, so pause the video and grab a drink yourself before we move on. Okay, I'm going to start with the lip category because I feel like lips are like the least exciting, and I don't have a ton of lips that I am decluttering this time around, even though I feel like my lip gloss category of my makeup inventory is going to be horrifying, really horrifying. I'm not decluttering any lip glosses in this declutter, but what I have decided to part ways with, just so you guys know, with my declutters, I either pass it on to friends and family, throw it away if it's super old, or occasionally sell on my Poshmark, but I've been super lazy with my Poshmark this year and I never sell anything that I've gotten through PR or gotten for free, etc. I will be decluttering these two Ofra lip products, and this is specifically just due to the shade. So I have one of their new Flexi sticks, and this one is in the shade Velvet. I'm just not wearing berry toned lip shades like this. I mean, usually I'm wearing a neutral. It's hard enough for me to wear red, so I'm just never going to be reaching for a shade like this. So I'm going to declutter that, and then I'm also going to declutter the shade Reimagine, and this is from the Ofra and Jen Loves Reviews collab. Again, just never reaching for a shade this dark, and I know you can mix these shades with other shades to like deepen them or whatever, but I'm just way too lazy to do that. So I know I'm not going to get use out of this, so I'm going to pass it along since I have barely reached for either of these. And there were other shades in both of these collections that I absolutely love. Again, it just comes down to shade for these two. I also have two from Nude Sticks I'm going to be getting rid of. So first I have their Gel Color Lip and Cheek Balm in the shade J Mama, and I actually really like this shade. I just never ever reach for this product because it's a little bit stickier and a little bit harder to use. It just doesn't work well for me. And then I also have another lip and cheek pencil, and this one is in the shade Sin, which again is a really pretty shade, not necessarily one I'm reaching for as often. Like if I were to compare the two, I definitely would keep J Mama over Sin, but I don't think I reached for either of these at all this year, so that tells me it's safe to declutter. I have this Ciate London Liquid Velvet in the shade Pinup, and this is something that I don't think I've reached for one time since owning this. Ooh, that is a really pretty shade, but again, I haven't reached for this all year, so I just don't see myself reaching for it. I don't think I've reached for this since I've owned it. I'm sure I got it in some sort of set. And then also I have this lipstick. I don't even know what brand this is from. This is in the shade Sunset Boulevard, and it's just this really, it's a beautiful mid-tone pink shade, but I really don't reach for shades like this very often. I think I got this in a BoxyCharm or something, and I'm just never going to use this. So rather than have it take up space in my collection, I'm just going to get rid of it. So I believe those were all of the lip products. I do have one skincare product I'm going to be getting rid of. This is from Clean Skin Club. It's their Vitamin C Brightening Booster. I've tried to get myself to reach for this, and I just can't do it. This is something that you can mix with other skincare to just give you a boost of vitamin C and to brighten your skin, and it just feels like an extra step to use this. And I debated trying to keep it around and trying to use it, but I've already struggled to get myself to use it even when it's at the forefront of my mind. So I think I'll just pass this along to either my mom or sister because I feel like they could get a lot more use out of it than I have been. I have one foundation type of product that I'll be getting rid of. This is from Catrice. It's their Clean Hydro BB cream. This was sent to me from Catrice through Octoly, and I was just not a fan of this. Even from the first time using it, I was like, ugh, this is not my jam. I went on to use it a couple more times just to make sure like it wasn't a first time error, and I just really don't enjoy this. So this is something I will pass along, see if my sister likes it, see if my mom likes it, but this was not a great product in my opinion. I'm also going to be decluttering this powder from Ilia. It's their Magic Sands Radiant Translucent Powder. This does have SPF 20 in it. For me, this is something that I've debated decluttering for quite a few months now. Honestly, I've really debated decluttering this since I purchased this and tested it out the first few times. This is a powder that wherever you place it down, it really just sticks to that place, and it's basically impossible to blend out. I've used this with a damp sponge. I've used this with just a powder brush, and I just cannot get this to work for me. The reason I've held on to it for so long is I keep trying to convince myself I'm going to find a way to use this or find a way to make it work for me, and I just am not enjoying it. I recently pulled my RCMA powder back into my Shop My Stash, and I forgot how much I love that powder, and that was really like the final straw for me with this. I was like, why am I going to force myself to use this when I have other powders in my collection that I like so much more? The RCMA powder is so much more affordable, so I'm saying goodbye to this. I don't like it. I don't want to use it. I have quite a few single shadows that I've finally decided to part ways with. Some of these I've been trying to decide to part ways with them since like 2017, and those are my MAC singles as well as one of my singles from Urban Decay. So I will be getting rid of Chopper from Urban Decay. I've had this in my collection for years and years and years, so it's really, really old. I'm also going to finally be saying goodbye to this was like the eyeshadow that I wore in high school and college, like the only thing. This is MAC Satin Taupe. I've gone through many pans of this. I've probably gone through like 5 or 6 actual full pans of this eyeshadow because this used to be like the only thing that I wore, but I haven't reached for this in years. So I'm ready to say goodbye to that, as well as the shade Sumptuous Olive. I just do not reach for single pans of eyeshadow unless it's like my singles in my Z palette. So I'm gonna say goodbye to those two. I also have this baked shadow from J Cat Beauty. It has 3 different shades kind of in one. I purchased this a couple of years ago to do like a trying new drugstore makeup. This had really high ratings on the Ulta website, and it's a nice shadow. I think it's really nice. I just never reach into single shadows, so I never reach for this, and I'm ready to give that up. Also from Ace Beauté, I'm going to get rid of their Glimmer shadow in the shade Cotton Candy, which is this pink shade. I'm still keeping, I think, the shade Ice Latte, which is a really, really beautiful like copper shade. The formula on this is really, really nice. I highly recommend these. I just don't see myself reaching for the shade. I maybe use this a couple of times this year, but aside from that, I was never reaching for this, so I am going to just pass this one along. I also have these 2 Block Party shadows from Dose of Colors. So I have the shade Leave Me Alone, and I don't know if I've used this one time since I purchased this, and I've had this in my collection for probably 2 years at this point. It's just way too deep, and I'm never going for something this deep on my eyelids, so I haven't reached for that. And then I also have the shade Shall We Dance, which crumbled and broke. This was actually really, really pretty, and if this wasn't crumbled, I probably would use this, but I honestly feel like if I repress this, it's just not going to be the same, so I'm just gonna throw this one in the trash. I have 2 Stila products I'm gonna be getting rid of. The first one is the shade Diamond Dust. I have had this since these released, so this is like 3-ish years old, so it is definitely dried out. And then I have one of their Glitter and Glow, no, not Glitter and Glows, I have one of their Glitter and Glows, another just dried out one that I will be tossing in the trash. I'm also going to get rid of my Melt Stack in She's in Parties because I just don't reach for the stack. It's probably been years since I've reached for this, and if I really want this color story, I'm just gonna buy the actual eyeshadow palette. I think it's pretty. I already lost one of my stacks. One of the pans like fell out pretty shortly after I got this. I think it's a really beautiful color story, but again, I can always just buy the palette. It'll have more shades, and it doesn't come in this really bulky packaging. So I will be getting rid of that. I'm also going to be decluttering my ABH Brow Powder Duo. I have the shade Ebony. I just get really bad hard pan every time I use this. I've had this for like 2.5 years at this point, and honestly, I just reach into like a dark eyeshadow for powder for my brows lately, and that works just fine for me. I debated keeping this to try and use this up, but it's such a frustrating product at this point to use because I get hard pan every single time I use it. So I'm going to just get rid of that. And I'm also going to get rid of my ABH Dip Brow Pomade in the shade Medium Brown. This is really old, and I just don't use a brow pomade. I'm much too lazy to reach into a brow pomade, so I'm finally ready to say goodbye to this as well. I also have 2 eyeliners I'm going to be getting rid of. I have this one from Marc Jacobs. This is in the shade Mist Me, which is a really light purple. I have found light purple eyeliners just seem to be a miss across all brands for me. I also had a light pink from Urban Decay that did not work. I have this one from NYX I'm also going to be getting rid of in the shade Periwinkle Pop. This is one of their newer eyeliners, and I also have one from Pixie that I probably will end up decluttering as well. I don't know why I didn't grab it for this. I've just found that with the light purple eyeliners, for some reason they just are really dry, again across multiple brands that I've tried, and they do not even like show up in my waterline. So I'm going to be getting rid of both of these. I have some highlighting products that I'm also going to be getting rid of. So from NARS, this one is newer to my collection. This is one of their multi-sticks in the shade South Beach. I mentioned this, I can't remember what video, but I was really excited for this product, and it really just didn't work in the way that I wanted it to. I really wanted this to be a really beautiful like bronzer topper or work in the same way as the Tower 28 Bronzino, and it doesn't do that. It pretty much blends away into nothing, and I'm just super unimpressed with this product. I thought about keeping it because it is newer to my collection, but honestly I can't think of a time I would ever be interested in reaching for this, so there's really no point in me keeping this in my collection. Oh, I have one other eye product I am getting rid of. This is from Pat McGrath. It's their Angel Dust crystalline prismatic pigment. I just don't reach into pigments, and this honestly is like chunky and just hurt my eyes, so I will be decluttering that. And then I also missed this one from MAC, another pigment. This is the last eye product. This is a very old MAC pigment. I've had this probably since my college years, so I mean we're pushing like 7 years at the very minimum. This is in Shimmer Time. I have so much of this left, but this is so old. And then back to the highlighting products. So I have 2 Fenty minis that I'm going to be getting rid of. This one is really new to my collection as well. This is the Fenty Glow Diamond Dust Highlighter. This is way too glittery. I actually was like putting it on myself today, and it's just like, even as a body highlight, I'm just really not enjoying it. It's a little bit too deep for me. I don't want to keep this around in the summertime just to use as a body highlighter because I really just don't care enough about highlighting my body. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then I'm also going to get rid of this mini in Sandcastle. And the reason I'm going to get rid of this, 1, it's too dark for me. Even when I'm self-tan, I think it'll be too dark. And 2, I have the split pan that has Sandcastle and Mint Mojito. So if I really wanted to use this highlighter, I do have it in the split pan. And while I think that the baby Fenty highlighters are really cute, I just know I'm not going to get use out of these, so there's no point in me keeping them around. And then speaking of minis, I'm also going to get rid of this from Ilia. It was a mini of their Liquid Light Serum Highlighter. I just didn't think that this was a good product. It's way too runny, way too liquidy. It just didn't really work. I could see if you wanted to make a foundation, maybe like a matte foundation, make it a little bit more illuminating, or add some, I don't know, dewiness to it. You could definitely probably mix this with it, but I don't really care to do that, and this just doesn't really serve a purpose for me in my makeup collection. And then this was a tough choice, but I am going to get rid of declutter my Milk Makeup lipstick. This has been a product. This is like one of my only cream highlighting products for quite some time, and this used to be my like go-to gym highlight. Gyms are closed right now. I've barely gone to the gym this year. I need to get back in the gym when I can, just for like my mental sanity. But I know that I have just been enjoying the RMS Living Luminizer Quad so much. I find it to be a little bit easier to work with as well. For some reason, like the stick formula, because this is so large too, it's just a little bit harder to be more precise. For some reason, I don't love like going like this with my finger and then tapping it on. I just know if I'm reaching for a cream highlighting product, I would reach for the RMS Living Luminizer 10 out of 10 times more than I would the Milk Makeup Lipstick. I haven't reached for this much at all this year, and even though I do still really like this product, I think it's beautiful, I just prefer the RMS and would prefer to reach for RMS over this, so I'm ready to give this up. And then I just have one more product before we get into the eyeshadow palettes that I'm going to be decluttering. So I have this from Kat Von D. This is the Shade and Light palette, and this is really old, and so I was working on this middle shade in, I believe, my whole collection project pan. I already panned this in my whole collection. This shade doesn't really work for me. I honestly I don't use I just don't reach into this unless it's for some reason randomly selected for a project. So it doesn't bring me joy to use. I'm just ready to part ways with this at this point. Like, this is so old too. This is like when Kat Von D, like it still says Kat Von D. It's really old. So that brings me to the 10 eyeshadow palettes that I have decided to declutter. I do have like a ranking eyeshadow palettes video, ranking all the eyeshadow palettes that I tried this year coming up. So in that video, I will discuss still some of these palettes that I am decluttering, but it's time to say goodbye to these because I just don't see myself using them. I do want palette content to be an even larger part of my channel next year. Therefore, I want to constantly be trying new eyeshadow palettes. It's just like, I love eyeshadow. I love trying new formulas. I get really excited about buying new eyeshadow palettes. Therefore, my collection just doesn't have room for stuff that doesn't get me excited to use. So some things that don't get me excited to use. Up first, I have this one from NYX. It's the Ultimate Utopia. This is the smaller version, and this was just okay in my opinion. I've said on my channel before, I feel like I'm an eyeshadow snob, and the cheap packaging just like doesn't make the experience all that fun when I am playing with eyeshadow, and I never get excited to reach for this. So I just feel like this would just sit and collect dust in my collection. So I will be passing that along. And then speaking of being an eyeshadow snob, I just didn't care that much for the eyeshadow or the e.l.f. bite-size quads. Like, they were fine. The quality was fine. Nothing over the top. For $3, sure, it was good. But I'd rather just pay more or use my other palettes that I have in my collection. So I have the Pumpkin Pie as well as the Berry Bad. Again, I thought those were fine. If you're looking for just like a really affordable drugstore option for eyeshadow, I would recommend these. But for me and my personal preferences and tastes, they just don't fit into my eyeshadow collection. The Lawless The One palette. You guys know I have droned on about this palette and my distaste for it. I just didn't think it was a good palette, and the only time I could see myself using this is if I was forcing myself to use it because I hadn't used it in a while, so why keep it in my collection? Kind of going along with that theme, the ABH Riviera, I feel like I've kept around just because it's an ABH palette, and for a while I felt like I was collecting them, but I don't enjoy reaching for this, so why am I going to keep this around? I also think in 2021 I am going to try and really get a ton of use out of my ABH palette collection and start to declutter some of the older ones in my collection, so like the Modern Renaissance, the Mario palette. By the end of 2021, I'm hoping to have tons of pan in those palettes and feel a little bit more comfortable saying goodbye to those palettes just because they are so old in my collection. It's probably time to get ready to part ways with that, but I will be decluttering the Riviera palette now. The Dose of Colors Blushing Berries palette. I really do like this palette. I think it's nice. I just don't reach for these tones all that often, and I could only see myself using this palette a couple of times next year, or just in general. I've only used it a couple times this year, so even though I do think this is a really good formula, this is just the one color story of the Dose of Colors 5 pans that just I don't get a ton of use out of. So I'm ready to say goodbye to that. I also recently tried out the Ofra Empowered palette, and I think this is fine, but it's just nothing special in my opinion, and I just don't feel like I would use this all that often, so I'd rather just pass this along to someone else while it is newer in my collection and let someone else love it more than I would. And then I think these are the final two. So I am going to finally be getting rid of my Sephora Pro palette. This has been in my collection for so long. I keep telling myself I should keep this around because there's gonna be that day that I'm gonna want like a really bright teal shade. And honestly, I've been getting more into color this past year, but not from this palette. I've really enjoyed my Sugar Pill Bite Size palette. I've also really enjoyed playing around with the Kaleidos makeup formula, and I'd rather just dabble in indie makeup for colorful shades than keep the Sephora Pro palette around. Again, this is older in my collection. I never reach for this. I never am like, oh, I'm gonna reach into my Sephora Pro editorial palette today. So I'm ready to get rid of this. And then this was another tough decision because this used to be a favorite palette of mine. This is the Juvia's Deuce palette, and this is just one that I haven't been as excited to reach into. I still think it's a beautiful palette. I still would recommend this palette if the color story speaks to you, but it's just not something that I am excited to reach for anymore. Therefore, I feel like I just don't have room in my palette collection to keep this around. And I'm gonna say goodbye to the Juvia's Deuce palette. And after that, that is everything that I will be decluttering in this final declutter of 2020. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below. Have you recently decluttered anything? Do you disagree with anything that I decluttered? Do you feel like I should have kept it in my collection? I would love to know. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.